Let me introduce our next speaker, who is a returning speaker. He was also a speaker last year at Code Dive. Rafał Legiędź, if I managed it. One of the most difficult surname I ever had to pronounce. Rafał works as a software engineer for Solid Brain. He has been in industry since 2007 and develops his passion for the software at every possible moment. He believes that being pragmatic in our field is very helpful and proves that by switching technologies whenever there is a need or an opportunity to learn something new. He started with .NET backend solutions. He quickly became a web guy, and then he got his head around different kind of mobile technologies and VR, AR. As his passion evolved, he has gotten obsessed with knowledge sharing and community activities. This has led him to start a conference, to giving talks, and to conducting workshops whenever he can. As you can see, he's a busy man who does a lot of things, but whenever he has free times, he also plays drums. Today, he's going to talk about augmented reality, the state of play. Please give a warm applause for Rafał.
Thanks. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I guess it works. Okay. Okay, it works now. Okay, hello there. Thank you for a warm welcome here. So this talk is about augmented reality, and this is not going to be a very technical talk. I mean, I'm not going to show you any new fancy toys or any new framework that you can start using and it's very fresh. It's mostly a talk about my observations. So as it has been said here, I'm Rafał Legiędź. You can find me on Twitter at Rafek, and I work for Solid Brain. I am responsible for augmented reality experiences, mostly using HoloLens, Microsoft HoloLens. And I talked about it a lot of times last year, around, well, 20 plus conferences I did with HoloLenses. And that's why Microsoft awarded me with an MVP award. And also I I organize a conference in Krakow, DevConf, which is every September. So why this talk? So why do we see a talk about augmented reality? It seems like an old technology already. I mean, we've seen this phrase around lots of times, right? And I'm far from being an expert here. I've just worked with this technology, with this area for about 2 years now. So it's just because I've been to many conferences for the last 1.5 years. And I talked with lots of developers, lots of non-developers as well. And as I'm working in this field, I also talked a lot with people from different businesses. And it occurred that there's still lots of confusion around this technology. I mean, people are still confusing AR with VR even. And they do not know usually what kind of devices are out there. We can see conference speeches about like HoloLenses or Google Glasses or whatever the fancy toy is out there, but we can't see talks about like overall landscape of augmented reality. And that's what I wanted to achieve with this talk, to deliver something that would give you a nice overview of what we have right now on the market of augmented reality, how we got there, and what is the possible future, for example. So this talk is mainly out of my observations. So augmented reality is one part of the metaverse. And the metaverse is, well, let me give you a description here. It's a collective shared virtual space that is created by the convergence of virtually enhanced physical reality and physically persistent virtual world that includes all virtual worlds, augmented reality, and the internet. This is a fancy definition, but it used to be named cyberspace, but cyberspace right now is a definition of the internet. But basically, I mean, everything virtual every virtual world is in the metaverse. So augmented reality is in the metaverse, but to be more specific, augmented reality lays on the virtuality continuum. And virtuality continuum spans the reality and the virtual reality. And augmented reality is one kind of an experience that lays between those two extremes. And when we go further to the virtual reality end, there's an augmented virtual thing and everything in between augmented reality and augmented virtuality. And Steve Mann introduced also a term called, the other axis called mediality. Because augmented reality, I mean, by definition, augmenting something means adding something on top of something else, right? So augmenting reality means that we add something to our perception of the real world. Because AR is basically, I mean, the most basic definition is that we add digital content on top of whatever we see in the physical world. But also, it was noticed that some of the augmented reality systems also can remove something from whatever we see, right? So augmented reality systems sometimes are called mediated reality systems. That means that the system mediates between your perception and the real world. And sometimes they remove something and sometimes they add something. So you can find different definitions on the internet. Sometimes it's called mediated reality, sometimes it's called augmented reality. But augmented reality is this the most well-known phrase for this technology. And also, it's very, very important, because I've seen that multiple times. It's very important to distinguish AR from VR. I repeat that every single time. But the truth is that whenever, I mean, it's pretty common that, especially with business people, that sometimes someone approaches me and he or she start talking about some new technology that he or she saw at some event, and that it's VR, and he would like to have something like that in his business process, etc. But when I keep talking with that person, all of a sudden I understand that he actually means augmented reality. But the people usually do not differentiate between AR and VR when it comes to definitions. So it's really important to distinguish it, that VR is something that is the experience that creates a fully synthetic world, and we fully immerse into that world, so that we do not have a perception of our physical reality, but we are fully in some artificial world, right? And AR is about extending or mediating our physical reality. We're still in our physical reality, but it's kind of delivered to us in a mediated way. But also, it's worth noticing that whenever we think about augmented reality, we think about extending our vision or augmenting our vision. But it's not actually like that. There are companies that are producing prototypes that also augment our other senses. And, well, we perceive our reality with our all senses, right? It's not only vision. It's about taste, it's about smell, it's about touch, it's about hearing, right? And augmented reality actually means augmenting the full spectrum of our perception of the reality. So there are companies that are actually creating devices for augmenting our hearing. You can see that in all those fancy and expensive headphones, for example. We can cut off from ambient noise, for example, right? That's kind of mediating, right? Isn't it? So imagine there are other devices, like you can add some sounds, you can have some kind of equalizer in your ear so that you can correct the bass or the treble of the surrounding audio, right? So just imagine that someday maybe we would have augmented reality systems that contains all of that, like augmented hearing, augmented tasting, augmented smell, augmented vision as well, right? So that's augmented reality in general. And that's pretty close to what we could name augmented human, basically, like Adam Jensen from Deus Ex. Whoever played that game? Yeah. So, but he has never asked for this, right? But we can still. Not sure for how long. But let's go back. Nowadays, augmented reality is is basically about augmenting our vision, right? So it's mostly about the displays, and the displays are the things that most vendors are focusing on, to be honest. But when you think about it, if you'd like to deliver a good augmented reality experience to the user of your device, it's not only about creating good displays, good see-through displays or optical lenses, right? To deliver like fully immersive system that would seamlessly blend 3D content with your surroundings, you actually need lots of technologies to be involved in there. So it's not only about displays, it's about cameras, it's about positioning, it's about tracking, it's about optics, image processing, it's about ergonomics and AI. Those devices has to be really packed up with technologies. So that also explains somehow why this technology doesn't evolve that quick as the other technologies, because this is a really, really complex field, and problems here are really hard to solve. So why should we even care, right? Why should we care if there is no ultimate device out there, right? I mean, what's in it for me? Because we're probably old enough here, all of us, that we remember Google Glasses, for example, that were released around 2012, right? Who remember Google Glasses? Yeah, almost all of you. That's true. And it was a wonderful thing at the beginning, and consumers all of a sudden, I mean, and it was supposed to be a consumer product that would eventually be introduced to the mainstream, right? And consumers quickly extrapolated possible usages of augmented reality device, the wearable device that Google Glasses were. But the thing was that the technology back then wasn't there yet, right? It was good, it was okay, but it wasn't there. I mean, we extrapolated our expectations like really high, right? We would like to do everything with it, right? To make our lives easier and better, but it didn't happen. So the thing is that most consumers were like, okay, AR is, well, it was a nice try, at least, and we moved forward. And most of the developers, as far as I understood from discussions, just stopped thinking about AR when they saw Google Glasses, and then there's a big void. Nothing happened after that. But luckily, vendors of augmented reality systems didn't stop after that. They kept pushing. And also it occurred that industries, not consumers, but industries are way more forgiving when it comes to technology. They noticed that with augmented reality systems that were and are available right now, they can still try achieve some milestones, like they can try reducing costs of producing stuff. They can reduce time and workforce, right? So, for example, what happened with Google Glasses, it's not like they killed the product. It's actually, Google actually released the second version of Google Glass, but who heard about the second Google Glass? Yeah, it's like maybe 4 people there on the audience. Yeah, but it happened actually. There is a second version of Google Glasses, but Google realized it as well, that consumers are not yet, or they weren't, the market for wearable AR systems, but they noticed that the industries are willing to pay for it and are willing to be more forgiving for getting not ideal solution, but the one that can help them out with the business. So Google worked with several companies to make a second iteration of Google Glass, and they released it, and there are companies that are actually using it. But you can't buy them like that. You have to become some kind of Google partner or something like that. But still, the message here is that maybe you can't reach like regular consumers, but you can reach industries. And that's what I'm going to mention a little bit more later as well. And also, why should we care? Because it's really, and why industries care? Because it's really easy to understand that the promise of augmented reality is pretty clear, and it's gonna bring a lot of value to us. It's like, since we have screens out there, we usually, for the last decades, whenever we are interacting with computer systems or with any content, digital content, we use 2D projections of anything that is inside the computer, right? And sometimes 2D projection just is losing information because that has to be projected on the 2D screen. But with augmented reality systems, it's like you're breaking the glass and you are going to be a part of the computer system and you interact directly with it, basically, right? And also, that ancient Greeks even knew that, which is called the method of Loki, I don't know how to pronounce it, but when you combine visual techniques and your spatial perception, your memorizing, your learning capabilities actually rise. You learn better, you learn quicker, etc. So, and also with the augmented reality, the promise is that we will all be experts because we will have like all the information right in front of our eyes, and also we will stop banging each other because we are looking at the mobile phone screens, right? Because we will have everything in front of our eyes. So there are a lot of advantages as well, but also there are lots of dangers, of course, right? So we have to be really careful what we wish for with augmented reality. We probably all know Black Mirror, right? Okay. The other thing, why should we care, is that's the kind of a fresh thing, because that started happening around 2016, 2017, that all the big players practically jumped onto this bandwagon, right? So that wasn't there before, but since Hololens, I guess, which were released in 2016, that's Microsoft that joined the bandwagon in 2016. Then 2017, I think that Facebook released the platform for creating augmented reality experiences for mobile apps. You all know those fancy filters you can apply on Facebook app in the phone, right? The camera and stuff. Yeah, so we can actually program it. There is an app. There's an app from SDK from Facebook that can program those filters and those experiences by yourself. And then Apple entered the market in 2017 as well by releasing ARKit. And in 2018 they released the second version of the ARKit. And Google entered the market before with Google Glasses, but they re-entered the market with new augmented reality experiences by introducing AR Core, which was called Project Tango at the beginning. So this is a clear message, right? This is the message that, okay, so if all the big players are in the game, so that must mean something, right? And there's also some other message. If you look closely and search through the internet for augmented reality system vendors, you could probably find around 100 of them. There are like lots of and tons of different headsets out there, and helmets and HUDs and extensions, etc. So it's like I just pasted some few examples here, but you can see they are in the different forms, and they look differently. Some of them are consumer targeted, some of them are highly specialized, like jet fighter pilots, or the medical one for projecting 3D content during surgeries. Some of them are like telepathy walkers. Some of them are ones that you attach to your current glasses that you have. So this market is already huge, but we only usually know like a little fraction about it. And why should we care? Because we are developers, and we are the ones that are gonna be responsible of creating and shaping this field of technology. I mean, some of us that will jump on it, right? So believe me, right now it's it's a good moment to start digging into it, because even if the consumer market is not ready, the industry market is super ready for it. Maybe not super ready, but if they understand what are the outcomes, or if they understand that they can actually earn money with that, it's gonna work. You're gonna have projects. You're gonna have you're gonna be able to play with this technology even as a research thing. So for me, well, I remember one thing from the not that long time ago is I used to be, I mean, I am a developer since 27 or 28, something like that. And I started with backend solutions, then I was doing web stuff. And I remember, because I was responsible for delivering internal web apps for a big company, that everything that was happening, that was support for a line of, how do you call it? A line of business applications. All of that was happening in web apps, right? I mean, at least where I were. And then it was 2009 and 10, iPhone was released, and the smartphone era began. And all of a sudden, we realized that we can move some stuff from web to mobile phones, and to unlock some other possibilities, we can make, our workforce work smarter or being more productive because they would have all the necessary information with them, right? But I remember all those discussions with the businesses when I was working back then, that okay, we can use that technology, we can develop some software for mobile phones, but well, we have all the, I mean, what I'm referring to is moving whatever logic we already have in web apps to mobile apps, right? Just to provide better tools for our workers, right? But the business was like usually like, okay, but we have everything that we need already developed. It's out there. I mean, people are using this app on their computers. Everyone has laptops, so they can do stuff there, right? I mean, the logic is already there. So why should we put more money into developing software for mobile phones, which is not cheap, of course, and then we would need to buy all the devices. I specifically remember one conversation when it was, where it was one guy that was like, okay, but even if you develop it, I would have to buy like 500 iPhones. And they were even considering maybe not iPhones, maybe we'll buy iPod Touches because it's pretty much the same, but you can run apps there, but it's gonna be slightly cheaper, right? Can you imagine this kind of conversation right now? I mean, everyone has mobile phone, and it's just no one even considered doing business without mobile applications, right? And it wasn't that long time ago what I'm referring to, right? It was like 2012 maybe, right? So it's like 6 years, but right now it's like completely normal thing, right? So what I notice is that very similar pattern right now. Right now I have discussions with some businesses like, okay, should we move something from one place to your glasses because that's gonna make you money? And it's just like, oh, okay, Hololens are too expensive, or people are not, people will not get used to it, etc., etc., or they will play games on it rather than work. This was the same concern when we are talking about mobile phones. I remember discussions about like, okay, I'll buy my workers iPhones, but then they will be using it for something else, not work, right? That didn't happen. So let's do a quick recap how we got here, right? So by the way, this is Dennis Gabor, inventor of holograms. But I'm not going to talk about him. I'm going to talk about a quick history. So as I mentioned at the beginning, augmented reality is not a new thing. You all probably know what augmented reality is or was, or you heard about it in different forms. So it all started with Pepper's ghost. It's, I don't know if you see it clearly, it was like more than 150 years ago. So the technique worked like this. There was a room. I mean, it was usually for entertainment and amusement parks or theaters. So there was a room under the stage, where you have a person and the actor on the stage, and there was a big piece of glass in front of the audience, which was put on at the angle, and whenever you lit the person on the lower room, the person's ghost appeared on the stage, and it looked like the ghost is there, and it was, well, augmented reality, wasn't it, right? So that was 150 years ago. Then during the Second World War, for example, the first HUD was developed, at least the prototype. So with the Havilland Mosquito night fighter, they developed connection to some radar systems, and then they streamed those information onto the HUD that was in the cockpit of this fighter. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? And then in 1950, a teleprompter was developed. The first teleprompter produced by Hubert Schlafly. Teleprompter is a device that allows the speaker in front of the camera look straight into the camera and just read the text that appears in the very front of the camera. And that works the same way basically until now. Then, 1961, the company called Philco, they developed a headset, the helmet. It wasn't AR system per se, but the interesting thing here, what they developed was the tracking system. So that's the first time when the company developed a tracking and positioning system, so that the headset knew where the user is and how he moves or she moves her head. So that's the breakthrough as well. And then in 1963, the Bell company, the helicopter company, they started developing augmented reality systems for their helicopters, so that the infrared camera that were mounted on the bottom of the helicopter was filming the ground, and the pilot was getting the augmented view of the ground in the cockpit, so that the landings at night began to be easier. And then Tom Furness, he's well known for being a father of augmented reality, actually. He started working at US Air Force in 1967, and he's actually the guy that is behind all the helmets with augmented reality for jet fighter pilots. So he started his work way long time ago. And then in 1968, Ivan Sutherland developed something which is called the Sword of Damocles, which was basically an AR system with see-through optics and a positional device, so that the head movement was tracked. And he was able to render a 3D cube in front of him and just see it from different angles. That's pretty cool, isn't it? And then Steve Mann, that's the guy, the cyborg guy that is behind the Meta 2 company that you might heard of. He developed his first augmented reality device called ATAP. In 1980, it was the prototype that he introduced. But that's basically a camera that is attached to your eye and see whatever your eyes see. And then he has a display in the back of the camera, and he was displaying straight to his vision. He was displaying whatever the camera saw, plus some digital content mixed with that view. And then in 1996, Sony released AR headset, which was called Sony the Glastron. So that was supposed to be a consumer product as well. I haven't ever used it, but it was more like VR device, because that was for gaming. You could play MechWarrior 2 on this. But the cool thing there that they made the glasses transparent. I mean, they were see-through, so you could actually play the MechWarrior, but you could see through the glasses, so you weren't that cut off from the real physical reality. And then the Turing machine, 1997, developed at the Cambridge campus, as far as I remember. It was a augmented reality device, a headset, and a specially designed computer that you had in your backpack, and that has a connectivity to GPS and the internet, and you could actually navigate outside, having your vision augmented. And then in 1998, sport vision company, used for the very first time augmented reality technique to draw this famous yellow line on the field during an NFL game, and that's being used until now, right? In 1999, AR Toolkit was released for the first time at the SIGGRAPH conference. That's probably the most well-known toolkit for creating AR experiences. Then, in 2000, AR Quake was released. Have you ever seen AR Quake? Nope, no one? So you can actually Google the video for AR Quake. That's Quake, the game that you can play outside and have a head-mounted device that you see through and you see your enemies. And there was a whole device developed for that. That's pretty awesome. And then in 2004, the very first AR system for mobile phones was developed on the old Nokia phone that tracked some target. And then 2009, Lego released the digital box, the stationary augmented reality system, so that when you approached it with your box of Lego, then you all of a sudden saw the rendered model of the Lego set that you had on top of it. Then Qualcomm company in 2009 released Vuforia system. That's a toolkit for creating AR experiences as well. That's being widely used until now. It was acquired by Dakri company not that long time ago. Then HoloLenses. That's nice information. I mean, that's an interesting information because that project was started in 2010. Microsoft called this project Project Baraboo, and it was based on whatever they developed with Kinect. But that's when development of HoloLenses actually started, and the mixed reality experiences that Microsoft is delivering right now. That's a long time ago, isn't it? And then 2011, Magic Leap got like huge funding. They gathered like $50 million as the investment for developing their headset. Then Epson introduced their prototype of Epson Move Area. Those are also nice industrial headsets. And 2011 as well, Google Glass project was developed, and that's the point in time we all remember, probably, as I asked before. So that's the history until more or less now. I'm going to talk about the newest ones in a bit. So as we saw, there are lots of AR systems, right? So this is a good moment to provide some kind of categorization for it, right? So that we can introduce some taxonomy. So all the AR systems are divided in two groups: wearable and non-wearable devices. We all know what that means. So wearable devices contains helmets, contacts, and headsets. Helmets are defined as, well, the helmet, so the display in front of our eyes and some kind of a helmet that covers most of our head. Contacts, well, those are contact lenses. There are no contact lenses right now available publicly, but surely there are some developments out there. So there's a category already for it. And headsets, which further divides to add-on and integrated, and that means all the smart glasses. Add-on are the smart glasses, well, the headsets that you attach to your regular glasses. Nice example is from Garmin. I actually learned that pretty recently. I ride a bike a lot, and I discovered that Garmin actually do smart glasses for bikers. That you buy this kind of device called Garmin Insight, I think, and you can attach it to your glasses, and there's a small screen here that you can pair with your phone, I guess, and you can have all the navigation informations and speed and whatever you want there that regards your ride. That's pretty cool as well. And integrated, that means all the regular smart glasses, right? And non-wearable AR systems contains mobile, stationary, and HUD. Mobiles are, of course, all mobile phones and tablets. And stationary is like the Lego digital box, so that's some system that just stays in one place and deliver AR experience to whoever is approaching. And HUD are heads-up displays, and those further divides to factory and retrofit. So factory are all the HUD systems that are factory placed in vehicles, or retrofit are all those devices you can buy for your car, for example, and just put it next to a windshield and connect to your system. So this is the rough taxonomy. All also goes even more deeper, because every single of those category is divided into like outdoor, indoor, consumer, industrial, etc. But I just cut it off because that's not that relevant here right now. So we ended our history in 2011. So what happened then? What happened then was what's called the first wave of AR devices or AR experiences. And that's when things started to speed up. So first AR experiences that we might remember from the recent history are those experiences that were based on markers, all sorts of QR code-like markers that whenever you see the marker through the lenses of your device and you had a special application, some 3D object popped out on that marker. And every marker has had coordinate system matched to it, and whenever you were moving the marker, the content that was attached to that marker moved with you as well. And this had all sorts of different usages. It wasn't that, I mean, it didn't stick with us until now that much, because, I mean, we can see it's limiting, but still, I mean, I've seen one pretty cool presentation in 2011, I think that was, that the guy from NASA was showing at the conference the whole Apollo 11 mission based only on those markers. He had developed the application, the visualization of the whole Apollo 11 mission, you know, the Saturn V, the launch, the whole stages, and then the landing module and the command module, and all of those modules were different tiles, and he was playing with those tiles in front of the camera, and the whole mission was visualized. That was pretty educational and entertaining. So after the first phase, this wave, it was pretty long one. I mean, that it was like 2011, maybe until 2016, 2015, stuff like that. Then we got the second wave of AR devices. And the second wave, so-called second wave, is all about the context. So the previous AR experiences were they were the same for every single user, every single time that you were using it, right? And the second wave is about the context, so that the devices that we have right now in the second wave, and the second wave is what we have right now, is that the context is important. The devices can scan your environment, can read your environment, have all sorts of sensors. They can detect objects. They know where you are. Then they know who you are, and they know what to render to you and how to render it, so that you think that the things that are being rendered are actually there, right? And the other thing, really important in the second wave, is also sharing. Until now, it was almost impossible to share whatever we're playing with in augmented reality. So everyone could just take a phone or tablet or some kind of glasses and just play with it by themselves. But right now we can connect with each other. We can have multiplayer scenarios for augmented reality. Here is the picture. It was from, I think, the latest WWDC with the introduction of ARKit 2. We can create multiplayer games for augmented reality for iOS devices, so that we can get together and just play some virtual game on the empty table, right? So this is very important. And also there is a concept called AR Cloud. And AR Cloud is, well, that's something, this is the idea behind AR Cloud is to create representation of the actual world for AR. So that, for example, whenever I'm using some app right here, right now, and I would leave something here, whoever would comes next in this location and run the very same app, he would see whatever I left here. So that unlocks lots of different collaborative scenarios. And there are actually lots of companies like startups who claim that they develop AR cloud systems. And I played with some of them. It's basically about scanning everything wherever you go. So there is an app for Hololens, for example, by Practical VR, where you put the headset on, and this is basically a game that you fire it up in some location you are in, and you just scan the location, and you are guided by some arrows or some visual cues, and you just grab some money or something like that, and while you play this game, you scan the area, right, and everything that is being uploaded and then stitched together, etc. So this is something that is happening right now. So what about the second wave? What kind of devices do we have, right? What can we take right now, today, tomorrow, and start playing with and delivering those experiences? So first is, I'm gonna start with the oldest one, which is 2016, so that's Hololens. I was talking about Hololens last year, and it was another session about Hololens last year as well, so you probably know what that device is. Is there anyone who doesn't know what Hololens is? One person here. Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick recap of what Hololens is. That's a device from Microsoft. This is a see-through head-mounted device, so that we see whatever we're doing. That's a standalone PC that sits on your head. It's from Microsoft. It runs on Windows 10, and you can do sharing. You can do applications for multiple users, like what we see right now. You develop in Unity or DirectX directly using C++. What's important here as well? Well, the important thing here, from my perspective at least, and my experience, is that that's from Microsoft. So whenever you're approaching a business, some company that already has Microsoft products within their infrastructure, it's always easier to introduce new concept when it comes to from Microsoft than any other, because they know that's from Microsoft. I mean, what can go wrong, right? But they trust this company. That's the truth, right? I mean, big companies, they trust Microsoft, so it's easier to develop for HoloLenses for industries than with any other system, I think, at least from my experience. So let's skip to another one, ARKit. First introduced by Apple in 2017, then the second version in 2018. I think it was March this year, or April, something like that. So this is a toolkit for iOS devices. And when ARKit was introduced for the first time, Apple claimed that this is the largest AR platform in the world, because what happened is they unlocked maybe not all, but you had to have like a newer iPhone probably for this, but it's not like you had to have like the newest one, but they unlocked AR capabilities for many users, like at one moment. So all of a sudden you had access, as developers, you had access to many people with augmented reality enabled devices. So, and this is strictly, maybe not strictly, but it's mainly consumer targeted, right? So you can, with ARKit, you can target actual consumers and doing games and some utility apps. And you develop there in either Unity or Unreal Engine. You have sharing there as well, so you can create experiences for multiple users. And well, it's pretty mature already. And well, you can also use SceneKit if you don't use Unreal, for example. This is the special kit from Apple for creating 3D content. And there's another one called AR Core that's from Google, and that has its roots in Project Tango, also developed by Google. And Project Tango was Project Tango was targeted to special phones, so they released some phones with Asus, I think, as far as I remember, and some other one. That phones, they needed to have special sensors, like a depth sensor, but in addition to the camera, so that they scanned the area in front of the user. But after further developments, it occurred that the camera is more than enough. And I forgot to mention it here, that the very important thing for ARKit is that it also knows and detects floors and walls, etc. So you know where the floor is, you can place things on the floor. That's pretty important thing. And AR Core has basically more or less the same features as ARKit. It's targeted for mobile phones, obviously for Androids, and you can develop there in Unreal Engine, in Unity, and you have all the SDKs available. And also, this is interesting thing here is that they also have a plugin for iOS. So you can write an iOS app that is able to connect to Android-based app when it comes to the sharing scenarios. So we can have cross-platform multiplayer AR experience. That's pretty important in some cases. And the newest thing, has anybody heard about Magic Leap? Some people, yeah. So this is the newest thing. I mean, it was it was announced in 2011, right? And it was a big hype because they were gathering money, but they weren't showing anything for 7 years, more or less. But well, they finally released that in October, and that's the newest headset out there. They claim to be consumer and industry targeted, but it's, when you look at the tag price, which is slightly cheaper than HoloLens, but not that much, it's clear that it's not consumer. But still, it's the new device. It's slightly better than HoloLens. I mean, it depends how you look at it, but it uses similar technology. It's a wearable computer, but you don't have all the computing power here, but you have it attached to your belt. So the headset itself is not that heavy. You have eye tracking there. You have 6 degrees of freedom controller, and you have more gestures than what you have in HoloLens, where you have only one, basically. And it runs on the Linux kernel-based operating system called Lumin OS, and you have everything available on the internet. All the emulators or all the SDKs, and you can start playing right now without even having a headset. That's what I started doing. I just started to developing some stuff, mainly only in the emulator, because I'm still waiting for my headset. I mean, I haven't ordered yet, but I'm working on it. So, but you can actually order it and get it. So this is the newest toy. I already know some people who were and still are developing for HoloLenses, and they are actually right now having more contracts and projects for Magic Leap than they have for HoloLenses, which is pretty interesting as well. So this is happening. So what is here? What in all of that is for you, right? So should we still care, right? So in my opinion, I mean, I wasn't in this field 2 years ago. Right now, I know this is the place I want to be, and I think more and more people should be aware of what augmented reality can give us, even if it's not a consumer market right now. We can do a lot in the industry market, like a lot. And what happens, for example, that's from the recent days actually. I mean, there are people calling me sometimes and asking questions like, hey, I've been to some expo somewhere, industrial expo, and I've seen people from the X company, they were using some kind of headsets to improve some process in their factories. I want to have something similar, or could you please explain me how it works? Because that looked pretty interesting, so I would like to know more. And that keeps popping out. It started happening, right? So it's, in my opinion, it's a right time to start. If you're willing to start, it's a right time to jump on it. And well, what the future will bring, I don't know. Probably in the future we will have something which is called, which we saw in Star Trek, right? The tricorder, the sensing machine, portable sensing machine, but better because we will be wearing it on our heads. And well, the vendors, that's Steve Mann, by the way. Inventor of Meta. Let the vendors do their work and work on newer devices, and we can start embracing it right now, right? We can start developing stuff, and we can give feedback to every vendor, right? What we are expecting, how are we dealing with the stuff? We can show the world what we are doing with AR, because we are developers. We are responsible somehow for creating this future, right? I know. I mean, right now you usually look very odd when you wear any head-mounted displays, but we probably, in the not that distant future, we probably get to the point where the wearable devices for augmented reality won't be that awkward. And for the very end, I would like to, for anyone that is interested, I would like to introduce you the 3 books that are worth reading, that I based this presentation on. It's Augmented Human, The Fourth Transformation, and Augmented Reality. If you want to know anything more about the concept of augmented reality or what is happening or where it is headed, just go read them books because they are pretty good. That's pretty much it. Thank you, I guess. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer. And I also have Hololenses with me, so whoever would like to play with it, just approach me and I can give it to play. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
If you have questions, you can raise your hand. I will give you the microphone. I don't see any hands.
Thank you then.
Thank you. Big applause.